How do you invest and renovate properties for profit? What's involved? Is it easy? Is it difficult? How do I do it? Well, the best way to explain this really is for me to show you an example of what I do, how I do it. That will enable you then to see what's involved. This video will give you a brief guide as to the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and sideways, whichever way you want to call it. My name is Roy. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this channel because as a property investor, renovator, house flipper, I've got lots of information to share with you that will inspire and encourage you maybe to do the same. Now, I've been investing and renovating properties for quite a few years, to be honest with you. And over those years, I've probably done most property investment strategies that are out there. I've done land development, I've bought houses, I've flipped houses, I've converted commercial into residential houses, buy-to-lets, HMO, service accommodation, you name it. I suppose I've done it. There's always something to learn in property. I'm always on the lookout for a good deal. And more often than not, I'll always try and buy a property that's below market value. Now, what does that mean? Well, basically that means that if a property is on the market, say for, let's just say argument's sake, £150,000, and I offer £120,000 for it, and it gets accepted. Now, straight away, I've made money, because if you deduct £120,000 from £150,000, it means I've made £30,000 profit or saving by paying less. So if I really wanted to, I could just, after I've bought it, I could put that property straight back on the market for £150,000, even though I've purchased it for £120,000. And I could sell it for 150 and make £30,000 profit. But before I actually go ahead and buy a property, I'll always sort of look at it in such a way as to whether or not I can increase its value, even though I'm buying it below market value, and whether or not it's going to be a good investment. And for example, what property investment strategy does it fit? Is it going to be good to flip? Is it going to be good as a buy-to-let? Is it going to be good as maybe HMO or even holiday letting? So when I view the property, I'll always in my head go through different options and ideas as to how I could improve the value, improve that property, but also increase its value at the same time. But if I know it's going to be good for, say, a buy-to-let or to flip, I will always view the property with that in mind, because whatever you're going to offer on a property is going to be dependent on what strategy you're going to use that property for. In other words, maybe I'm going to spend, say, let's just say, for argument's sake, £50,000 renovating it. If I'm going to flip it, I'd want that renovation to be to a very high standard and create the wow factor, so hopefully it'll sell quickly. But if it's going to be buy to let, I might not want to spend quite so much as that, because I know it's not maybe going to be looked after. So I'll always sort of budget accordingly. So anyway, here's an example, okay, of a property that I went to view. And as you can see, it's quite, quite sort of not run down, but it's aged. But it's a mid-terrace property, Victorian style. Inside is quite large, but it offers a lot of opportunity, and it's in a prime location, I can tell you that. So I'm viewing this property, and already in my mind's ticking over, and I'm working overtime thinking, yeah, what can I do? How can I get this to really look smart? Now, I'm going to show you the after photo, okay? This is the property after I renovated it. So when you compare the two, I'm sure you'll agree, or I hope you'll agree, it looks a lot better. So straight away, the curb appeal, okay, for this property has improved dramatically. And already it looks more valuable than what it did look like. So as I walked through the property, it was dark, it was dingy, it'd been empty for a long time, but it had been used unofficially as a HMO, or even maybe unofficially flats. Nobody really knew at the time, but already I could see the potential. It was big, it had nice high ceilings. It did need complete modernization, which I knew then meant was going to increase its value substantially. But I needed to work out how much it was really going to cost, because if the refurbishment costs were going to be so high that I wasn't going to be able to sell it to recoup my money, then what was the point in obviously buying it in the first place? Now, when you look at the back of the property, as you can see in these photos, it's old, it's neglected, yeah. But when you look at what I then did, okay, the completed photos, I'm sure, again, you'll agree that the garden looks totally different. the extension and the rear of the property looks modern, bright, and fresh compared to what it did look like. So already in my head, when people see the finished product as opposed to what it was like, they wow, I love it. However, in my head, I knew we could turn this into 3 flats. Now we could either sell the flats individually, or we could maybe holiday let them out because this property was a very popular seaside resort. So again, I knew the popularity and the demand in the area was quite high for these type of properties. So as I'm walking through all of these properties, I'm thinking, right, it hasn't got planning permission as 3 flats, although I do believe it was used as 3 flats because the signs, the individual metering inside the property seemed to indicate that. However, the staircase was situated in the middle of the property. Now, if you look at the floor plan, for example, with the staircase being situated in the middle of a property, it meant we were limited as to how we could alter the property to accommodate 3 flats. So to move the staircase was going to be quite expensive to do, which in real terms was going to save us money because we knew we didn't have to have a new staircase. Anyway, so straight away, one of the first things I started to do when we were going through the process of buying the property was to instruct architects to come along with me and see if my ideas, thoughts, were worthy. So we got the architects round, even though we hadn't bought it, we got permission off the estate agents and so on. And straight away, the architects started to put together some brief plans for me. Now, at the same time, I consulted our planning officer or planning consultant. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to be sure that we could get planning permission, because you can imagine if you're going to buy a property that requires planning permission and you complete and then you can't get planning permission, you're stuck with the property. Now, that could be detrimental because it could mean now what are you going to do with it? Are you going to lose money if you can't get planning permission to do what you want to do with it? So it was important in principle for me to be confident that I could get planning permission. And John, our planning consultant, sort of said, yes, I'm fairly confident, or 99% confident you will get planning permission. However, we need to tick all these boxes. So there's never a guarantee. And unfortunately, as some of you may know, when you when you're dealing with planning officers, it can be an absolute, or the planning department, should I say, it can be an absolute nightmare. Anyway, we decided to take the plunge, and we bought it, and thankfully we got planning permission pretty quickly, actually, because we did all our homework. We did all the necessities to get the planning officers to agree with what we wanted to do. So as soon as we acquired the property, bang, we went in there and we started to strip everything out. We hired builders under a contract to carry out the work for us. So bearing in mind, we knew exactly what we wanted to do with the property, and that was to turn it into 3 flats. However, if we decided to holiday let the flats out, that was another option. So again, we're thinking ahead with both those concepts in mind. Now, because we officially wanted to register the property and convert it into 3 flats, it meant that the building regulations and the works required to do the conversion had to be upgraded. Now, what I mean by that is we had to fireproof everything, we had to soundproof everything, and we had to install sprinkler systems. So all of these costs, these extra costs, so to speak, are more than what maybe you would pay if you just refurbish a standard house, because you don't need those type of things. But because we were converted into flats, we did. So again, we had to build those costs in, and this is where sometimes people, they get their budget and the renovation costs wrong. It's very important that you understand from day one exactly what is involved when you renovate a property. So don't think that you're going to buy a property, you're going to renew the electrics, renew the kitchens and bathrooms or whatever, plaster it, paint it, and that's it, because it's not. There's a lot more to it. There's fire doors. You have to fire rate every floor, stop fire spreading, all these type of things, and it costs money, and quite a lot of money as well. So you have to build all that in. Now, as you can see from these photos, when we were stripping the property out, it was quite exciting, really. It's one of those things where anybody and everybody can get involved. And when you see things getting stripped out and so on, and then you're left with a blank canvas of walls or ceilings and or joists in the roof, it's quite exciting because you can do quite a lot to the property. But also at the same time, I knew what the finished look was going to be like. And I think that's important that you share with that information with your builders, because it not only does it motivate them and inspire them as to what the property is going to look like, it gives them the motivation as to what the end goal is going to be and how valued they are. However, I don't mind admitting that throughout this project, or at the beginning of the project, everything was going well. The health and safety side of things, as you can see here, was set up. Health and safety posters, signing in books, registers, the scaffolding went up. People were wearing the protective clothing and so on. Everything was going really well. We decided on this project to get our architects more involved to do the regular inspections, fortnightly, weekly inspections as well, to make sure that the contractors were doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. But unfortunately, cracks began to show, and yeah, corners were being cut. And this is another reason why it's important to always be on top of things and to, check the work that the builders are doing. Or if you can't, get somebody to do it. But the great thing is, we went in there, we knocked the walls down, we started to reconfigure some of the layout, and very quickly, you can see from these photos, things were getting coming together again. Because once you stripped everything out and it starts to come together, it is a great feeling. Now, at the same time, I'm out and about and I'm designing things and I'm pricing the finishing touches up. Bathroom suites do we need? What colors are we going to use? And what I tend to do, whether I hand draw it or do it on computer, I will do a plan for everything. I'll create a plan for radiator positions. I'll create a plan for electrical layout. I'll create a plan for the colors of the walls and so on. The tiles that are going to be used in the kitchens maybe, or the bathrooms, the types of lighting. And I'll do as much of that as we're going along. If you could do it before, that's great, because you've obviously then costed it up, which is very important to include in your budget. But because we then decided that we were definitely going to holiday let this, I wanted to make it feel clean, fresh, have a beach theme, but create a wow factor as well. Because if for whatever reason we changed our mind, we decided to sell the units as flats, it would still appeal to those potential buyers. Anyway, as time was going on, we did have an asbestos report done. So whenever you're carrying out a major refurb on this scale, or any property really, you should have a survey to establish whether or not there's any asbestos in an old property. And it turns out there was a little bit in this particular property. And as you can see, this report, we had an extensive report done to identify where the asbestos was, what course of action we needed to take in order to safely remove that asbestos, and at the same time to make sure everyone working in the premises was protected and safe. And as time went on, we then realised that the main roof itself covering was substandard. And we identified this after we removed a lot of the plasterboards from the vaulted ceilings inside the property. And we could see some old leaks and so on and so on. So it was then determined that we were going to have to replace the roof. And it was at this point when the builder was doing that work, began to realize that he was cutting a lot of corners. Anyway, cut a long story short, what happened was the builder we found out was running into financial difficulties. So what I did do was do a bit of research and found out he was working on other projects where they were working, contacted those clients, and yes, exactly the same thing was happened to them. Within a week or two, his business did collapse. He did owe us a lot of money, but sadly, he'd covered up as well a lot of bad workmanship. So what we then did, okay, it's difficult, it's demoralizing, but we knew we had to get the project finished. So we brought in our own teams, our own men individually, and we decided to project manage it and just crack on with it. And we did. And it was great. We had some great people. And as time was going on, we knew we had to design a sprinkler system. So I got a company in to do that. I would walk around the property with the electricians and show them everything, where we wanted everything, what we wanted. Same with the plumber and so on. And the involvement of us all was a big team effort, although it cost us more money because, this builder had money and we had to do a lot of the work again. It meant that, yes, we were going to run way over budget, But unfortunately, when you reach this type of situation, there's not a lot you can do. However, we decided to focus on the positive and get this project finished. So at the same time, I'd go to kitchen companies and I would give them the measurements, invite them to come to the site, and they would measure up and give us a design for the kitchens. And again, the nice part about a renovation project, refurb, is that you can either work with these people to design something, or you can hire somebody else to do it. I love doing it myself because not only do you learn, but you come up with ideas, and not everybody will like them, but it's always key that you try and stay neutral, because if you're going to sell a property and you pick some dark, horrible colors, that's not going to suit everybody, is it? So you've got to still stay neutral, light, and hopefully decorate and design colors on kitchens and bathroom suites, tiles, and all this in such a way that the majority of people are going to like it. So it is a lot of work, but as time is going on, you can see, the bathroom has changed from this 1960s, 70s look bathroom into something nice and modern like this. And the kitchens, they're very old, they're dated, they're minimal. But again, these are the finished products of the kitchens, and you can see there's a massive difference. Now, when we first bought the property, if you look at the front elevation by the roof, there's a tiny little window. And when I first went into the property on that particular floor, in that room, it was really dark. It was like, I suppose, the London Tower dungeon, it was horrible. Nevertheless, I come up with the idea of opening all of that wall completely, because not only would it create a nice focal point, I felt it would allow a lot of light to come in. And the builder at the time said, "Oh, no, 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 it's going to be a lot of extra work and structural work." I said, "No, it's not." And I knew it wasn't, thankfully. No structural work was needed. So we opened it up and we put this huge window in, and wow, what a difference it made. As you can see, from this little window to this was a big, big, made a big difference. And believe it or not, even when the project was finished and people were visiting and staying there, everyone commented how nice that particular room was. And people living nearby would also comment and say, "Wow, what you've done to that front elevation is amazing," because nobody else had done it in the street, although the majority of people had the same window in that attic room. So again, as the project was going on, I knew that we were increasing the value of this property substantially. So when you think that we paid, 160 something thousand pounds for this property, um, the only way the value was going to go up really, it was up rather than down, even though we had issues with the builders. So again, each room had to be, we designed each room. We tried to do something different. We used different materials to create different themes and different colors. But what you find when you're doing a property like this is that fire escapes are very important. Fire regs are important. But again, you don't increase the value of a property by having fire doors. You don't increase really the value of property by having a sprinkler system. What you're doing is you're complying with regulations, so that when you come to sell a property or rent it out, it fully complies. Because think about it, if you don't, you can't sell it, then you can't rent it out. So getting it right is just so important. And even when you come to sell a property, for example, if we decide to sell these as flats, we'd be able to sell them no problem because everything was fully compliant. Even the rewire, we go from little meters and fuse boxes like this, all messy, out of date, to something, nice and substantial like this. So everything's done properly. Even, the front of the property, although it's a tiny little garden at the front, as soon as we landscaped that and tidied it all up, people were like, "Oh, wow, look at the difference." So just put yourself in this position for a minute and look at the picture of the property when we bought it and the picture of the property now. There's such a big difference. And this is what I relate to as curb appeal, because if you were selling the property and somebody saw it like it is now, they think, "Wow." Whereas when it wasn't refurbished, it was, everybody would walk past and it wouldn't draw any attention. But as soon as we renovated the front of it, landscaped it, everybody was paying attention. I believe it or not. A few of the neighbors were copying. Anyway, that's a good thing, because when you think about it again, is if the neighbours are copying what you're doing, what is that going to do in the long run? It's going to improve the value of the other properties nearby and the neighbourhood. So it's all a win-win situation. I think personally it's important that you landscape when you refurbish, because if you're going to rent a property out and you do as much of the refurb as you can at once, in the forthcoming years, it means that you're not going to have to spend or, spend a lot of money on maintenance or upgrading or so on. So doing things right from the very beginning for me is always the way forward. Now, I know it's down to budget, but at the end of the day, what you've got to realize is that if, for example, things go wrong after you've partly refurbished a property, it might mean that you can't rent it out. So if you can't rent it out, you've got no income. Whereas if you do it first and foremost, then hopefully it's going to be trouble-free for many years to come. The other thing I found was that when we were coming to look at the furnishing of the properties, there was so many different places that we could get the furniture from. And one of the most time-consuming things is when you have to look around. You have to shop around, not only for the best prices, but also for the best products. That's going to create that wow factor. Now, just take, for example, staging. Now, staging is where if you're going to sell a property, you stage it with furniture. For example, if you go into a new house that's on a building site, with some of the big developers, you'll go into a show home, won't you? And when you walk in, 9 times out of 10, you don't actually see or look at the property inside. You look at the furnishing. And this is a big distraction, but it also gives you inspiration as to what you can do with that property. So the furnishing and the staging is what sells it. And we always stage our properties, but of course, because we were going to let this out as a holiday let, we knew the staging was going to be full time. It was going to, the furniture was going to stay there, and yet we wanted to buy good furniture, modern furniture, but cost effective furniture. We're not going to spend £800 on a bed. We're not going to spend £20,000 on a kitchen. So we knew we had to look at buying things that were going to last, but nice and appealing. And of course, they're going to be, and of course, items that maybe we can clean easily, but also maintain easily as well. So that's, it is going to last. So again, all of these type of things are things that you got to think about. But if you're project managing a big refurb like this yourself, it's really important that you manage it time-wise to perfection. So, for example, it's no good booking in the decorators if you haven't already plastered. Okay, it's no good booking in the plasterers if you haven't rewired. So you have to get your timeline, your project management timeline, spot on. And it can be difficult. Sometimes you're going to have to get trades working alongside one another, over each other. Some trades don't like doing that because ideally, sometimes not everything goes to plan. So some of the trades will work over, they're not on time, and other trades have got to come in. But it is important to try and get it right, because if you've got a clean, happy site, happy people, you'll find that the project will run a lot smoother as well. It's always a good idea to set a timescale on the completion date as well. Because, for example, on this particular project, when we put the scaffolding up, it rained and it rained and it rained, which meant we couldn't do a lot of the work outside. And yet the scaffolding was up, costed us money to hire it every week, and yet we couldn't do what we wanted to do. So again, it is very important that you try and get this right. Now, I know you can't control the weather, which is understandable, but when things do run over, it does mean it's going to cost you a lot of money. So just be mindful of that as well. Another important thing to bear in mind is that whenever you complete a refurbishment project or renovation project, is to make sure that you get everything certified. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you're involved in building control, or whether that's through the local authority or independently, those inspectors should be inspecting the work that you carry out, the structural work and everything else that needs to be certified under the building control legislation and regulations, to make sure then that when the work is completed, the building control officer will issue you with a building control certificate, such as one like this. but also that the electrician will give you an electrical certificate as well. The sprinkler system or the sprinkler company will have to give you a sprinkler certificate, and also a fire regulation, a fire reg certificate as well. Now, if you've got any gas appliances installed, you'll need a gas certificate as well. And all of these certificates are then given to the building control officer. So at the end of the project, he will check all of those items, group them together before he issues the final completion certificate. And this is just so important because once a building control officer registers a completion certificate, that then goes to the local authority. So when you come to buy or sell houses, your solicitors or the solicitors involved should be doing their local searches to make sure that the property you buy in, if it's had any work carried out, has been done correctly. This makes the whole process of buying and selling properties a lot easier, and to protect you, the buyer and the seller, to make sure that you're buying something where the work that has been carried out has been done properly and is certified. So in essence, in basic terms, this is what really a renovation project can entail. Things can go wrong, like I said, with the builders, tradespeople. Now, if you're interested, you can visit this website. I've got lots of fact sheets that you can download and lots of other information that may help you on your property investment and renovation journey. Or you can direct message me and I'll do all I can to help you. So in the meantime, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, give us a like, a share, and I will see you, hopefully, on my next video.